Ascribe is building an ownership layer for the internet. And it's something that's never been possible until now. But due to a confluence of technologies, like artificial intelligence, databases like Neo4j, we actually use them, and machine learning, and the blockchain, it's now possible. So what is an ownership layer for the internet? Before we get there, I'd like to tell you, or just bring you into where we are now and the mess we're currently in. So in 2005, economists estimated that the total value of land on Earth was $50 trillion. At the same time, a different set of economists estimated that intellectual property was $25 trillion, so about half. But if you think about it, in the last 10 years, pretty much all the intellectual property, all the value that's been created on Earth has been digital. It's intellectual property. It's our designs and icons. It's publishing, music, videos, 3D designs, virtual worlds. Most of the value in the world, arguably, has been created digital. And so if you think about this, in the last 10 years, if you say the value of land has doubled to 100 trillion, IP should also be about 100 trillion. So what stops IP from really being leveraged by, not just by big companies, but by every single individual, and not just in the Western world, but also all over the world, Africa and Asia, in places where they are just now getting connected up to the internet. So it's because the rules of digital are different. Everybody knows this. It's perfectly copied. It's stored for free. And you can transmit it within seconds, anywhere on Earth. And what that means is that, it's a confluence of perfectly copied is digitization. It's one of the major trends of our world in the last 30 years. Stored for free is Moore's Law. It's the fact that storage, processing, it all halves in value every 18 months. And over time, that's a logarithmic reduction of costs. And sent instantaneously is the internet. It's bits and bytes moving at light speed. And what all that means is that attribution to the original creator gets broken. An idea can spread very quickly, but you can also strip out information about who the creator is, and also what their intent was. And the original creators of the internet foresaw this. In the 60s, when the internet was being architected as part of the US Department of Defense, one of the architects was named Ted Nelson. And in 1960, he foresaw that if you create this really dumb network that can transport information, you're going to lose attribution. And so what he did was he architected a system where every single page was linked to every other single page. And as anybody who knows mathematics knows, you have an x to the n relationship, which means that as you increase the number of nodes in the network, the density becomes so great. In other words, it becomes unmanageable. It's almost impossible to make this happen over time. But already in the 60s, they saw this happening. And 50 years later, we're at the point where we are now. The internet has exploded. Everybody creates digital value, but it's really hard to monetize. And it's really hard to monetize because of one person. And it's also, like this Project Xanadu, I'll just give you a side story. They're still working on it. In 1995, Wired magazine wrote that this was the world's longest vaporware project ever. And 20 years now, since 1995, that article, Ted Nelson is still kicking. He just released last year Open Xanadu, which is the same architecture, but it's just not possible, right? Like, this is just not the way it's going to be. And it's not possible. He's fighting a lost battle because of this guy, Tim Berners-Lee. In 1989, he proposed this architecture for the internet that would allow for you to link to another page and not force you to link that page to link back to you, one-way links instead of two-way links from Xanadu. And that's much more possible because I don't have to ask permission from you if I want to link to your page. I just do it. This is obvious, right? Click on a hyperlink, blue, you go there. And that is what allowed the internet to spread so rapidly starting in the 90s. And it's brought a huge number of value for us, right? We cannot imagine the internet that we currently have. I mean, right now, you know, when you do a booking for a hotel, the first thing you look for is not necessarily the bed or the location. You search based on does it have free Wi-Fi, right? Because it's like breathing now. And then you look at the location and then the bed and all this sort of stuff, right? This is so fundamental to who we are now that we cannot imagine it not being there. But what this also means is that the internet is a bazaar. It's a Turkish bazaar where if you can't find it on iTunes and Amazon, you go to Google. Everybody goes to Google immediately. And you look for the content you want. Maybe it's a photo, maybe it's a design or what have you. You find it, you right-click, and you copy. If you're really moralistic, you might actually try to say, who owns this? But really, not many people do. And why is that? Like, I believe fundamentally people are good if you make things easy for them. And the example I use a lot is Napster and iTunes. Napster made it so that we were used to, and we got used to sharing information and downloading information. iTunes made it easy. It made it so we felt good about it because it was so easy to license content. You could discover content, and this was 10 years ago when iTunes first came out. You could discover content, and it was just so easy, why steal? Just download it. It's there. For $2, you can have a song. And you don't have to go to this torrent, and you don't have to worry about getting a virus on your computer. All these things, you trusted iTunes. But it's also because you were able to download it friction-free. And the difference is easy discovery and licensing. So why don't we have this now? Why don't we have, essentially, a Google for ownership? And that's what Ascribe is trying to do. We want to become a search portal that allows you to search for content, right-click, and license. And license meaning license with one of the partners that we work with. So that could be iTunes, that could be Amazon, it could be any marketplace platform that wants to sell content. But what you do is, you're making this level of abstraction. Before Google came, you had to go to Yahoo to find the stuff that you wanted to buy, and you actually bought it on the site. Google went one level above and just gave you discovery, and then you go to that site and buy from it. And this is for physical goods. Why don't we have this for digital goods? And that's what we're trying to do. And the power of this is fundamental in that right now, large corporations and nodes control content. If your content doesn't fit to the US community standards, it's not on the iTunes platform. It might not even be on the Amazon platform, right? If there's some content that Europeans like, but it doesn't fit US taste, so for instance, toplessness, or anything that is just relatively like the way it works here in Germany, it won't be on the iTunes, right? So that's a limitation. We are all kind of bound to this US-centric moral structure. And Ascribe allows for anybody to find any content anywhere in the world. And that means that you could all set up your own shop and we will find you. And if somebody is just searching for content, a 3D design of Mickey Mouse, it'll say, buy from iTunes, buy from Amazon, or buy from this designer. That's our goal. And working backwards on how this happens, so because this is a big challenge, right? Content can only be consumed if licensing is cleared, right? If we have clear intent of the creator, we know that. And licensing can only be cleared if we know who the author is, who it's attributed to, who the creator is. And attribution can only be secured if you have a central registry or a group of registries networked together. This is what's missing in our world. We have, in the world, 180 different copyright laws, because this is fundamentally copyright. Pretty much everything that we do intellectual property-wise, that's not patents and trademarks, is copyright. And we don't have a global approach. And everybody knows, digital. The moment I create a file here in Germany, I send it over to the US and the UK or China, you're in a different copyright regime. And one of the things we realize is that DRM, watermarking, all these things that are more about punishment don't work. What you actually want to do is the iTunes model. You want to make it so it's just so easy for people to collect content or buy content that you just do it. That you appeal to both friction-free consumerism and just that they can just do the right thing. And that's the problem right now. People can't do the right thing. Right? I in the past, before I started discovering now I'm not allowed to, right? But I would just go to Google, right-click, take the photo. And I did try looking a few times for the owner, but I couldn't find them. So what are you going to do? How can you actually find that original owner, the photographer, the designer, and just say, I took your work, but I'd like to give you something. You can't even find them, and even if you find them, you don't know how to find out what their intent is. So what we do is we give you that. We have a registry that's built on the blockchain. We have the discovery tools, which you can't see, which is a search, and then we have licensing, which is trying to take some of the best practices from the world in there. So I'm just going to focus, I guess, on the blockchain, the registry part, because that's kind of the goal of this talk. And the blockchain is really interesting because it's this database that anybody can write to. Nobody controls, and it's 100% transparent. Why is that so important? It's because, let's look at an example for payments. If you have ever tried to send money from Germany over to the US or US to Germany, it takes 3 to 7 days. And why is that? It's because every single bank has their own database of accounts. Your account and somebody else's account. And when you ask to send money to another account, it'll transmit through some intermediaries, and then it'll go to that other bank and say, I'd like to send this money to you, will you accept it? And that bank asks you, does that person have the right amount of money? And then another message goes back to the bank, and then they say, yes, we do. Then they do a batch process that happens once a day, because banks were built 50 years ago, the IT systems. They do that batch process. They send the information to this middleman who holds it. And then this bank gets a request to say, can I have this money, right? And then they batch it in another day. And then finally, they'll write it to your account. This is how it all works. It takes 3 to 7 days, depending on where you come from. If you come from places like Africa or Asia, it takes longer because there's less trust in the system. In Germany, of course, we have the revising system that is very fast. You can have it in 1 day. It's because the trust is very high in Germany. And why? The problems there is that you have slow reconciliation. You have middlemen, and you have intransparency. Once you've sent that order, you actually don't know if it gets to the other person. You don't know if it went to the right account or anything until about 3 or 4 days later. And it has happened in many times in my past where it's gone to the wrong person. And you just don't know until a week later, and then maybe it was something really important, like buying a plane ticket. And what the blockchain does is it solves all these problems. You have on the same database everybody's accounts. So if I say I want to send this money to this person at this account, you just change the tag and you put it here. And it's done in seconds. You get rid of the middleman, because the middleman in this whole process takes between 3 and 5% sometimes. That middleman's gone because that's a database that nobody controls. And the third part is transparency. You know exactly where your money is going immediately. And that's why the blockchain is so powerful, because right now the first use case was Bitcoin. Everybody used it for Bitcoin, but that's not the real use case. 2 years ago we realized if you can transport value on this blockchain, that's money, you can transport value that's not money. So we patented this idea. Patented the idea of transporting non-financial value on the blockchain, and it can change the world, because right now you have land title registries, you have vehicle registries, health records, all these things that you can put on the blockchain. And it's not the actual information, it's a hash of the information. It's a secret little code that only the people who have the key can unlock. But when it's on this database, you can prove that it's there. Yeah? And that's why the blockchain is going to be so revolutionary for the world. The blockchain is essentially at the stage of 1990, right when Tim Berners-Lee released HTTP and allow the internet to spread. And it's going to transform our world in the next 30 years. And we want to be the company who can unlock this. We open source everything. We are giving away essentially this whole concept of that everybody should be able to claim their attribution and claim their authorship. And the way we're going to make money is by taking a cut off the marketplace when they sell something, when somebody opens their wallet. So we're trying to make it so that it's open for the world, so that people can collect their, claim their work. But at the same time, if we can unlock some value, we'd just like to make a couple percent. And that's how we're going to try to make money. So in summary, we are building an ownership layer for the internet. It's something that's never been possible before because of the rules of digital, right? Perfectly copied. Yeah, you can store it for free and transmit anywhere. And we're doing the closest approximation of ownership that you can have in digital, which is A, this is mine, B, this is my intent on it, so everybody knows if they discover the work, and C, I can also see how that stuff spreads, and people can find me if they want to. Yeah? And it gives consumers the power to find what they want without being bad, and it gives creators the power to own what is theirs in a really easy way. And it gives them more options to sell, and you don't have to go to iTunes in the future. And that's what Ascribe is doing. It's the ownership layer everybody's been waiting for since the 1960s in Xanadu. Thank you.